Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we provide the strategic roadmap to being the best-informed commercial leader in the room. Today, we're diving into, well, a really critical challenge facing chief revenue officers right now.
Mm-hmm.
How do you shift your organization's focus, moving from just, passively forecasting what might happen?
Yeah, predicting the weather almost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To actively engineering the kind of intentional growth outcomes you need, especially in this whole everything is a service world we're in.
And look, this isn't just about plugging some new AI tool into your existing sales pipeline and calling it a day. This is bigger.
Right.
This exploration today is really about fundamental organizational reinvention. We're looking at the architectural shift needed to truly unify sales, finance, and operations.
Breaking down those silos we always talk about.
Precisely, moving away from those, sequential, siloed handoffs towards a much more synchronized orchestration. And that's powered by continuous foresight. The goal is, well, it sounds simple, but it's profound. Embed anticipation right into your commercial DNA.
Maybe let's unpack that straight away. Our sources had this fantastic illustration. They called it the paradox of perfect prediction, using a hypothetical example of a digital infrastructure company. Let's call them Infracorp.
Right, Infracorp.
Right.
So imagine this company. They invest heavily, in their forecasting models.
State-of-the-art.
Exactly. And they achieve stunning numerical accuracy, routinely hitting within, say, 1 to 2% variance on their actual quarterly revenue. Now, on paper, that sounds amazing, right? The epitome of financial control.
I think they nailed it.
You would. But here's where it gets really interesting, especially for commercial leaders listening. That high degree of numerical certainty, it actually masked a deep-seated strategic vulnerability.
How so?
Well, because the aggregate forecast was always so accurate, leadership started to trust the number implicitly. They got comfortable, and that comfort, it slowed down their ability, maybe even their willingness, to question the underlying causes driving that aggregated trend.
So they knew the final score, the final number was going to be okay. But they didn't really understand the flow of the game, or maybe why certain parts of the business were underperforming.
That's exactly it. Their forecasts became these sort of refined measures of organizational hindsight. They reflected probabilities based purely on extrapolation of what was likely to happen if they just kept doing what they were doing. Optimized for prediction, yes, but not for action.
So they knew the revenue was coming in.
Right. But they completely failed to anticipate a critical shift in customer consumption patterns in one of their highest margin product lines. They saw the aggregate number was fine, so they missed the window, the crucial weeks they needed to pivot their go-to-market strategy before that negative trend became irreversible.
And that failure to pivot, despite having an accurate number, that's the heart of the issue we're discussing. The accuracy bred comfort, and comfort is, well, it's the enemy of anticipation.
It really highlights the core philosophical contrast we're exploring today. Conventional forecasting, it articulates what will happen if we just stay on the current path.
Business as usual.
Exactly. But strategic foresight, that's about determining what could happen if we act differently, if we act with precise anticipatory intent. So our mission in this deep dive is to explore how leaders can build what we're calling the anticipatory enterprise, an organization that stops just passively projecting likely outcomes and starts actively, deliberately engineering its commercial ecosystem towards the results it actually wants.
That sets the stage perfectly for part one. If the goal is engineered results, why are these traditional static forecasting models so fundamentally failing commercial leaders today? What's broken?
Well, I think it really boils down to one massive factor: the sheer velocity of disruption we're all facing.
It feels relentless sometimes.
It is. Just look at the last 5 years alone. Geopolitical volatility, huge shifts in customer behavior moving towards subscriptions and outcomes, supply chain chaos, AI-driven competition popping up everywhere.
Right.
Customer behavior, market cycles, even the regulatory environments, they're all evolving much, much faster than the traditional linear extrapolation methods we've relied on for decades.
I think we all recognize the world is faster. But practically speaking, what does that speed actually do to the forecasting models themselves?
It fundamentally breaks them. Because conventional models, they rely almost entirely on inside-out perspectives, historical data about our organization, our past performance.
Looking in the rearview mirror.
Exactly. And they implicitly assume that the conditions out there, the market conditions, will remain relatively constant for the planning period, maybe the next quarter or two. That assumption today, it's downright dangerous. We used to reserve dynamic systemic thinking looking at the whole ecosystem for those long-range 20, 30-year strategic plans. Now, because of this intense volatility, that level of systemic modeling, understanding the interconnectedness, is necessary even for midterm cycles. We're talking 1 to 3 year planning horizons.
But relying on just static quarterly accuracy.
It inevitably leads to strategic uselessness, because by the time you get that perfectly accurate number confirmed for the quarter that just ended, the window for proactive intervention, for actually doing something meaningful about the next quarter, it's already slammed shut.
And this rapid pace, this feeling of always being behind, it entrenches a really dangerous organizational mindset, doesn't it? What our sources call the reactive culture trap.
Oh, absolutely. And you see it expressed as management by variance. Teams spend enormous amounts of time, energy, and frankly, political capital looking backwards.
The post-mortem meeting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Analyzing historical misses, dissecting lagging indicators, figuring out why last quarter's number was off by 2%. It's all hindsight. And this constant focus on the past actively inhibits anticipatory growth.
So how does Foresight change that?
Foresight fundamentally flips the script on that executive ritual. It transforms the backward-looking postmortem into a forward-looking premortem.
Okay, a premortem. Explain that.
Instead of asking what went wrong, you institutionalize continuous sensing and ask what could go wrong, what surprises might hit us next quarter or the quarter after. The entire organization's focus shifts towards anticipating inevitable shifts and pressures, not just stabilizing performance after a market shock has already happened.
But running a good premortem, you need the right kind of data, the right signals. And often, companies feel like they're drowning in data, right? Which leads to this idea of data myopia.
Precisely. They are overmeasured, but severely underinterpreted. There's data everywhere, but not necessarily insight.
And this is where that conflation error you mentioned comes in, especially in the subscription or SaaS economy.
Yes. If you're only looking at a single aggregated revenue forecast number, you risk treating all revenue progression as if it's equal. You might be conflating, say, high churn, low value customer segments, the ones that look good on acquisition numbers but are expensive to keep, with your truly loyal, high expansion segments that form the core of a sustainable, continuous value model.
So the top line number looks okay.
The aggregated number might look perfectly fine, maybe even growing slightly, but underneath, the actual health of your revenue base could be precarious because you're losing the good customers and replacing them with less profitable ones.
I want to pause on that analogy our sources used here because it really struck me. Comparing those aggregated revenue forecasts to using aggregated pediatric growth charts for tracking high-risk kids.
It's such a powerful parallel, isn't it? Think about it. If doctors only use generalized metrics like tracking the average eye growth, axial length, across all children, they might miss the danger signs in specific kids developing myopia.
Because the average looks fine.
Right. The average chart looks healthy, but it completely masks the true dangerous velocity of myopic eye growth happening in specific high-risk individuals. And that delay means missing the window for critical, preemptive intervention that could save their sight.
And the commercial parallel is?
In the commercial world, relying on generalized aggregated revenue data similarly masks those high-risk trajectories happening within your customer base. Things like a subtle reduction in feature consumption for a key module, or slight deviations in price sensitivity during renewals, or slower adoption rates in a new segment. These are early warnings, but the aggregate number hides them.
Which delays the necessary preemptive action from, say, customer success or specialized sales teams to intervene before that customer churns or fails to expand.
Exactly. So the solution isn't just more data volume, it's about granularity and, crucially, velocity. We need to shift focus towards continuously trapping highly personalized metrics.
Like what?
Things like individual account health scores, sure, but also the adoption velocity of specific features within that account, tracking the rate of change in behavior over just looking at the absolute status.
Give me an example of rate of change being key.
Okay, say a key customer's health score drops from 95 to 80 over a quarter. That's a concern, obviously. But compare that to another customer whose score only drops from 95 to 90, but the velocity that drop tripled in the last week alone.
The second one is potentially more alarming.
Much more alarming. That acceleration, that change in velocity, signals something significant has shifted right now. That velocity is the primary input for genuine foresight, telling you where to focus your attention immediately.
This brings us right to the core dilemma, the forecasting paradox.
Yeah.
This inherent trade-off between numerical accuracy and actual strategic utility.
Hmm.
This must be the hardest part for a CRO to sell internally, right? Convincing finance or the board.
It absolutely is, because the trade-off is real and unavoidable. Think about it. The further out you try to make a projection, let's say 18 months out, the inherently lower its numerical accuracy will be. You just have less concrete data to go on.
Makes sense.
But that early, maybe fuzzier, lower accuracy forecast provides the maximum possible time for meaningful strategic action, time to reroute supply chains if needed, time to develop or acquire new product features, time to restructure sales territories. Its strategic value is potentially enormous.
Okay, but let's be real here. Convincing your CFO, or maybe the board, to commit significant resources, maybe millions of dollars, based on a projection that comes with, say, a 15 or 20% confidence band,
Yeah.
instead of waiting another 6 months for a projection that might have only a 3% band, that takes immense political will, a different kind of organizational culture.
It requires a culture shift fundamentally built on trust in the process, which is precisely why Foresight can't just be a tool. It has to be institutionalized. Waiting until the last minute does yield a highly precise forecast for what just happened or is about to happen immediately.
Right, the number gets very accurate. Close. Yeah.
But by then, your strategic options are severely limited. You're often reduced to tactical price cuts, maybe desperate account salvaging efforts, or just explaining variances after the fact. The precision becomes strategically useless. The problem isn't the warning signal itself, it's the organization's lack of readiness to act on it early.
So the job of the modern commercial leader.
It's to build systems and processes that are systematically equipped to continuously sense change, interpret it, and enable the organization to reorient its strategy before acute market pressure forces reactive adaptation. It's about being prepared, organizationally ready to act on those high utility, even if initially low accuracy, signals.
Okay, so if the crisis stems from static models crashing against market volatility, let's pivot to the solution, the foundations of anticipation. Before we get into the architecture, maybe we should clearly contrast foresight and forecasting side by side.
Yeah, that's essential baseline stuff. So forecasting, as we've said, is typically short-term, maybe focused on the next quarter or two. It's often a fixed event, like the quarterly forecast call. Its primary focus is on the accuracy of a specific point prediction and nailing the number. It's about probability.
And usually owned by.
Typically owned by sales ops or finance. Now, foresight, by contrast, is a continuous adaptive process. It spans multiple horizons, maybe 1 year, 3 years, even 5 years out. And its focus isn't on pinpoint accuracy, but on agility and plausibility of action. Can we adapt? What actions are feasible? It's about adaptability.
And ownership there.
That really needs to sit with a cross-functional body, like a dedicated revenue council that includes sales, marketing, finance, operations, customer success, everyone with a stake in the commercial outcome.
And just to hammer it home, that inverse paradox holds. High accuracy in forecasting often means low strategic value because it's too late to act, whereas lower initial accuracy in foresight can have incredibly high strategic value because it gives you that crucial lead time.
Exactly. Now let's make this operational. How do you build this capability? It starts with 5 guiding principles for utility. Principle 1, continuous context and narrative understanding. Meaning raw data, even sophisticated AI predictions without expert human interpretation is basically just noise. The machine might spit out, segment a revenue projection is down 8%. Okay, so what?
Right, what do we do?
The leader's job, using foresight, is to transform that number, that prediction, into a strategic story, providing the why, explaining that the predicted 8% drop correlates directly with, say, a competitor just securing a strategic regulatory certification in that region that we currently lack.
Ah, okay. That instantly shifts the conversation from just reporting a number
to strategic mobilization. Now we know why it's happening and what levers we might need to pull. The story has to explain the trend shifts, anchor the predictions in operational reality, and make it crystal clear which resources, maybe which sales teams need retraining, which product engineers need to prioritize a feature must be mobilized now.
Makes sense. Okay, principle 2, signal integration and holistic pattern detection. You mentioned silos earlier. In the subscription economy especially, our data feels fragmented, right? Quotes here, orders there, customer behavior in another system, supply chain updates somewhere else.
That fragmentation is the absolute death knell for effective planning today. Foresight demands complete data unification across these traditionally siloed systems. Why? So the system and the humans guiding it can detect critical, interconnected relationships that span across functions.
Give me an example of an interconnected pattern.
Okay, think about the friction often hidden in the quote and order management process. You might have a sales team offering a significant discount to close a deal that's a sales signal.
Trying to make the number.
Right. But maybe they don't have visibility into the fact that the specific product configuration being ordered requires a component that's facing serious lead time issues from a supplier that's a supply signal. And maybe, simultaneously, the customer success platform is flagging that this same customer is already showing reduced adoption of the core features that they bought last year, a customer signal.
Got it. So in a traditional setup, sales sees their discount, ops sees their lead time issue, maybe CS sees the low adoption, but no one connects the dots.
Exactly. They only see their own siloed metrics. Foresight, built on unified data, must reveal that interconnected pattern. Aggressive discounting combined with high supply risk and low product adoption probably means this deal, even if it closes, is a ticking time bomb. It's likely a long-term profit disaster.
So the system should flag this.
And demand immediate coordinated intervention. Maybe pausing that discount approval, suggesting a different product configuration that is available, or triggering a strategic conversation led by CS before the deal even closes.
Okay, Principle 3 addresses the human element, collaborative intelligence and assumption refinement. This tackles that trust gap we sometimes see between humans and AI.
Yeah, this is crucial. It's about fostering a truly symbiotic relationship between your human domain experts, your experienced sales leaders, your supply chain gurus, your CS veterans, and the machine learning agents.
How did that work in practice?
The AI does what it does best. Identifies complex patterns, processes vast amounts of data far beyond human scale. The human provides what it does best. Crucial context, strategic judgment, policy overrides based on nuance the AI might miss, and validating novel findings that seem counterintuitive.
And the key is the feedback loop.
Yes. The genius here is the trust mechanism. Every single time a human expert corrects an AI prediction or overrides a system recommendation with a valid strategic reason, that correction isn't just logged and forgotten. It's treated as a high-value, labeled data sample that gets fed back into the model.
So if the AI predicts high churn risk for a customer, but the customer success leader overrides it, saying, no, I know this account, they're just migrating platforms temporarily, they're actually very sticky.
That specific piece of human intelligence, that context, gets embedded into the model's logic for future reference. It helps the AI learn the nuances of your business, your market.
And that builds trust over time.
It institutionalizes trust. Leaders, rightly, distrust opaque algorithms they don't understand. But when they actively participate in refining the AI, when they see their own decisions and unique market knowledge being systematically embedded and improving the outputs, the prediction shifts from being some anonymous black box number to an output derived from collective institutional intelligence. Frankly, the AI's ability to learn rapidly from human context is often more critical in the long run than its initial raw accuracy.
Right. Okay, Principle 4, scenario discipline and resilience rehearsal. This sounds like moving beyond just predicting a single likely outcome.
Definitely. Foresight shouldn't just give you one number. Its real power comes when it stimulates strategic discussion by generating a range of plausible futures. Everything from a best-case scenario, like unexpected demand spike, to a worst-case shock, like a key facility shutting down unexpectedly.
So you run what-if scenarios?
Routinely. You need regular what-if simulations baked into the executive rhythm, testing the organization's resilience against various potential shocks. The system shouldn't just predict the shock. It should advise on the optimal responses.
For example?
For example, if a key supplier fails, which customer segment should we prioritize for our limited inventory based on long-term value? Which lower-margin product lines should we temporarily suspend production of? What are the precise financial trade-offs of each option?
So you're rehearsing the response.
You're rehearsing. This disciplined process ensures that when disruption inevitably arrives, because it will, the organization isn't scrambling and debating in the heat of the moment. They've already practiced the response, modeled the impact, and can execute a pre-agreed strategy much more quickly and effectively.
Takes a lot of the stress out of the actual crisis moment, I imagine.
Precisely. It shifts the dynamic from panicked, reactive negotiation to the rapid execution of a well-understood, pre-approved contingency plan.
And the last one, Principle 5, bias awareness and future neutrality. This sounds important, especially with AI.
Critically important. Predictive systems trained primarily on historical data, which is most of them inherently risk amplifying historical biases present in that data.
How so?
Well, If your past success was concentrated in certain market segments or with certain types of deals, the AI might learn to replicate those patterns, potentially overlooking emerging opportunities in new segments or with different deal structures simply because they don't fit the historical mold. It might guide you to keep fishing in the same old pond, even if the fish are elsewhere now.
So it optimizes for repeating past success, which might not be the right future strategy.
Exactly. So you need ethical guardrails. Foresight systems must be continuously audited, not just for numerical accuracy, but for potential bias in their recommendations. You need to ensure your go-to-market strategies, your resource allocations are being driven by genuine future opportunity, not just a biased replication of past wins. You need future neutrality baked in.
Okay, principles established. Let's get into the engine room now. The Revenue Foresight Architecture, RFA, deep dive. This is the framework, the plumbing, that makes prediction a continuous capability, not just a static report. Layer 1 seems foundational. Pervasive signal capture. What signals are we talking about here? We need to go beyond just closed deals.
Far beyond just transaction logs. For internal signals, we need to capture data points that precede the transaction and focus heavily on velocity and deviation. For instance, in a subscription business, think about tracking unusual deviations in discount rates being offered across different sales teams or regions. Why is one team suddenly discounting 10% more?
Or anomalies in order cycle times.
Exactly. Why are orders for configuration X suddenly taking 3 days longer? And crucially, behavioral sensing. We need to capture what users are actually doing.
Okay, what does behavioral sensing look like in practice, especially in this everything as a service model?
It needs to be hyper-granular. We're talking about tracking things like the average time prospects spend on specific pricing pages before they submit a quote request, or the consumption velocity of specific features per user relative to their contracted tier. Are they actually using what they paid for?
Or maybe tracking the reasons people give for cart abandonment in a self-service channel.
Yes. Or even using natural language processing to analyze renewal conversation transcripts for specific phrases indicating friction or satisfaction. This whole layer shifts our focus from just observing the outcome, the closed deal, the churned customer, to understanding the subtle behaviors that foreshadow those outcomes much earlier. That's the key to minimizing latency, getting ahead of the curve.
And layer 1 isn't just internal signals, right? It has to include external signals through horizon scanning.
Absolutely essential. This is the structured, always-on capture of those outside the system weak signals. Things that don't show up in your CRM initially. Geopolitical shifts that might suddenly impact logistics costs or market access. Unexpected competitor announcements about new feature bundles or pricing models. Even shifts in broad consumer sentiment about a key technology your product relies on.
So the RFA needs to constantly ingest and decode this external volatility.
And feed it into the internal models immediately so you see the potential impact alongside your own performance data. And one more piece here. Integrating qualitative behavioral sensing about things like price sensitivity and willingness to pay, perhaps by segment.
How do you capture that systematically?
Through structured feedback, surveys, analysis of negotiation patterns, maybe even specific questions embedded in the sales or CS process. Getting data that might reveal, for example, that your current pricing for a certain module is actually significantly below what certain customer segments would tolerate or perceive as fair value. That's vital for true value optimization, moving beyond just volume to maximizing profit.
Okay, signals captured. Layer 2 is correlation and the narrative engine. This is where the system starts making sense of all that disparate data.
Right. Here, advanced machine learning gets to work correlating those diverse data points across the now unified system: sales data, supply data, customer behavior, external market signals. The goal is to identify subtle, often non-obvious patterns that are simply too complex or voluminous for humans to spot reliably on their own.
What's an example of a non-obvious pattern it might find?
Okay, maybe it identifies that a sudden increase in high-urgency support tickets for your feature X isn't actually correlated with any internal bug reports or system outages. Instead, it finds a high correlation with a recent spike in negative social media chatter about a specific competitor's new offering that claims to do what feature X does, only better.
Ah, so the support tickets aren't a product problem, they're a competitive threat signal.
Exactly. A threat you might otherwise miss until it shows up in your churn numbers months later. And the output of all this correlation work is the narrative engine.
Now, what format does this strategic story actually take? Is it just feeding data into a fancy dashboard?
It needs to be much more than just a dashboard full of charts. The narrative engine should actively group related correlated signals into coherent, high-priority themes. and present these themes as concise executive briefings.
So less data dump, more synthesized insight.
Precisely. The output needs to clearly articulate the implication of the correlated data for the organization. It shouldn't just present a graph showing a dip, it should provide a written summary. We observe trend A likely caused by factor B, based on correlated signals C and D, which presents risk opportunity E. The critical next question for the Revenue Council is F. It translates the machine's findings into the human language of strategic decision-making, dramatically enhancing lead time for action.
Got it. Layer 3 moves into simulation and stress testing resilience. This sounds like where we leave static planning tools behind and embrace dynamic decision ecosystems, maybe using things like digital twins.
Exactly. The digital twin aims to create a dynamic, virtual replica of your entire commercial ecosystem. Your unique resources, your process flows, your constraints, all modeled in near real time. This is essential for truly understanding system friction points and potential bottlenecks before they happen.
What kinds of commercial variables are we modeling in this twin?
We're modeling things like the known pricing elasticity of different customer segments, the current capacity and real-time lead times of your critical supply nodes or service delivery teams, the expected conversion rates of different sales territories or channels under various simulated economic conditions, the impact of specific marketing campaigns on pipeline velocity. It's a comprehensive model of your revenue engine.
So back to that example. If a competitor suddenly drops its price by 10%,
The digital twin should be able to immediately simulate the likely impact, the expected customer churn rate increase in vulnerable segments, the potential pipeline slowdown in competitive deals, maybe even the required inventory adjustments or service capacity shifts needed to respond.
and it's not just passive prediction, you said simulation optimization.
Yes, that's the core function here. It's active optimization, not just passive risk prediction. Users, the Revenue Council, for instance, define specific what-if scenarios. What if our main competitor launches product Y? What if a key raw material cost spikes by 20%? What if a major facility goes offline for a week?
In the system.
The system doesn't just show the damage, it re-optimizes the entire plant, the supply flow, the go-to-market resource allocation, maybe even recommending specific adjustments to discount structures delivered via the, quote, in-order management system, all aimed at achieving the maximum possible profit under that new constrained condition.
That sounds incredibly powerful and potentially challenging to existing ways of working.
Absolutely. It also provides objective data to challenge static policy. Those rigid internal rules like fixed inventory stocking requirements or inflexible territory assignments that often fall out of sync with real business needs, the simulations can show definitively when a policy is hindering optimal performance.
Okay, bringing it home. Layer 4, the decision pulse and dynamic GTM. This is where insight turns into immediate action, closing the loop.
Right. This layer is all about eliminating latency between insight and action. The intelligence generated by the RFA can't just sit in a report waiting for the next quarterly review. The decision pulse ensures there's an always-on connectivity, feeding insights directly into dynamic adjustment mechanisms across the business.
What kind of mechanisms?
Several key ones. Dynamic pricing is a big one, automatically adjusting pricing guidance or discount approval matrices based on that real-time behavioral intelligence about buyer willingness to pay or competitive pressure. Adaptive capacity in operations, proactively triggering actions like activating backup suppliers or modifying production schedules based on early risk warnings from the system.
And adjusting the go-to-market itself.
Yes, go-to-market shifts. Dynamically adjusting sales resource allocation, tweaking territory priorities, maybe even shifting marketing spend based on the changing geometry of demand as sensed by the RFA almost instantly. This is where Foresight stops being analysis and starts driving continuous, profitable action in the market.
This whole architecture clearly requires a fundamental redesign of how commercial teams work together. Which brings us to part 4, unifying the commercial engine and really breaking down those historical organizational silos for good.
It has to. The traditional sales and operations planning, or S&OP process, is often very sequential, right? Sales creates a forecast, maybe throws it over the wall to finance.
Who then approves a budget?
Which then gets handed off to operations to somehow execute within those constraints. It's slow and prone to misalignment. Predictive visibility, this foresight capability, demands synchronized orchestration, moving towards true integrated business planning, or IBP.
Built on that unified data foundation we talked about.
Exactly. Foresight provides, ideally, a single shared version of the most plausible futures and the optimal responses. It enables all departments, sales, finance, ops, marketing, CS, to finally work off the same reality, the same assumptions in near real time.
So let's look at the impact on each function. For sales, how does their focus shift? It sounds like it moves beyond just reporting what's already in the pipeline.
Way beyond. The focus shifts dramatically from passively reporting the existing pipeline to actively, intentionally shaping buyer intent and maximizing deal velocity. Foresight transforms sales from being pipeline reporters into becoming augmented strategists.
How does it augment them?
Through things like augmented targeting, identifying not just leads, but leads most likely to close and most likely to expand into high-value, long-term subscription accounts later. And crucially, it powers true value-based engagement. Meaning, the intelligence captured by the RFA, the behavioral sensing, the feature adoption data reveals precisely which specific features or outcomes justify premium pricing for different customer segments. Sales can then use this insight to refine their messaging, confidently justify higher value contracts, and configure quotes accurately and strategically right within their quote and order management tools. They sell value, not just features.
Okay, now for finance, their role often feels like the backward-looking controller, the sales prevention department sometimes.
Well, Foresight aims to transform finance from that historical controller role into a much more proactive, forward-looking strategist. Firstly, through predictive margin modeling. Instead of just approving deals based on top-line revenue, finance uses the RFA's simulation capabilities to continuously model the likely margin sustainability of different deal structures, segments, and product mixes under various volatile supply and demand scenarios. They approve deals based on predicted long-term profitability and resilience, not just front-end revenue.
That's a big shift. What about cash flow?
That's the other critical piece. Finance can leverage what we might call a finance stability agent within the RFA to enable truly predictive cash flow.
How does an agent help predict cash flow?
By bridging the gap between commercial activity and financial systems, imagine connecting productivity tools, the salesperson's email confirming payment terms, the CSM's logs of collection conversations seamlessly with the core financial systems. This allows the agent to monitor payment commitments, flag potential delays early based on behavioral signals, and streamline the whole collections process. This drives the predictability of cash flow that finance needs for strategic investments and managing working capital effectively. It connects the sales promise to the financial reality much faster.
Makes sense. And finally, operations. How does their world change? Risk often feels like an uncontrollable threat for them.
With Foresight, risk shifts from being this uncontrollable external threat to becoming a much more manageable, even forecastable variable. Operations moves from constantly reacting to shortages and disruptions to proactive, systemic risk management.
Using those predictive analytics we discussed.
Exactly. Predictive analytics continuously monitors thousands of indicators across the entire supply network, Tier 1, Tier 2, even Tier 3 suppliers, logistics nodes, geopolitical stability indexes, providing early warning alerts long before disruption fully manifests.
And empowering them to do what?
Empowering them to establish, and importantly, practice sophisticated contingency plans. Activating backup suppliers preemptively, renegotiating key agreements based on projected commodity price volatility, maybe pre-positioning inventory. This proactive, preemptive approach is absolutely essential for maintaining mission-critical supply, especially in complex value chains. Think about preventing the kind of crises we've seen documented, like critical chemotherapy drug shortages caused by unmanaged, single-source manufacturing and logistics vulnerabilities. Foresight aims to prevent those.
Okay, so sales, finance, ops, all transformed. This clearly demands a new kind of leader at the top, orchestrating all this. The old command and control model sounds too slow.
Way too slow for today's dynamic markets. The shift is towards adaptive orchestration. The CRO, or whoever owns the end-to-end commercial process, becomes less of the top deal closer or forecaster and more of the chief system architect.
The architect of this RFA system.
Precisely. That becomes their highest leverage point. Designing, implementing, and continually refining the intelligent system, the combination of data, AI agents, processes, and human expertise that guides both the human teams and the AI towards optimal outcomes. Adaptive orchestration is about setting the framework, the guardrails for rapid, decentralized decision-making, while weaving together the disparate data streams and narratives produced by the RFA across all the silos.
So the new leadership loop is different.
It's less about reviewing endless spreadsheets and variance reports. It's more about a continuous four-step cycle. 1, identifying emerging problems or opportunities using the Foresight signals. 2, deciding on the desired strategic destination or response using scenario analysis. 3, explaining the chosen path clearly through what we call narrative forecasting. And 4, communicating the ongoing evidence that the organization is successfully navigating that path.
Let's dig into narrative forecasting a bit more. How does the leader translate potentially opaque machine outputs into a compelling strategic plot that everyone understands and buys into, avoiding mass confusion?
This is absolutely crucial. The machine models, the AI, they deliver the raw data, the sequence of events, you could call that the story. For example, the story might be, pipeline volume is down 15% quarter over quarter in our Northern European territory. Okay, that's just a fact, it's data.
Right, Flat.
The leader's job, using narrative forecasting, is to provide the plot. The plot is the artful arrangement and delivery of those events to explain the why and, critically, the required action.
Give me the plot version of that example.
A plot might sound like this. Okay, team, pipeline volume is down 15% in Northern Europe. However, the Market Scout agent within our RFA has correlated this directly with a localized competitor launching a new module offering deeply integrated complementary functionality. That's the plot twist. Based on this insight, the system is already simulated and recommends that we immediately authorize a specific value-added bundling strategy in our, quote, management system for that region. Widget models should allow us to recover about 12% of that lost margin and defend our share. Here's the plan.
Okay. That plot provides shared context, a clear reason, and a specific direction instantly. It unites sales, finance, product around a common understanding and action plan.
Instead of leaving them to argue about the raw data point in their separate silos for weeks, it creates unified organizational action. And to make this kind of dialogue routine, organizations really need to institutionalize Foresight forums.
Dedicated meetings.
Dedicated cross-functional executive sessions. But the key is their focus. The agenda is rigorously shifted away from reviewing lagging metrics and historical performance, and towards discussing forward indicators, future probabilities, simulation results, and potential disruptions. And critically, the meeting should always end not with a summary of the past, but with the forward-looking question. Okay, based on everything we're seeing, what could genuinely surprise us next quarter?
Forcing that pre-mortem thinking.
Exactly. That simple prompt forces the leadership team to actively challenge their own assumptions, consider low-probability, high-impact events, and engage in continuous scenario discipline as a core part of their job.
All right, let's dive deeper into the AI itself. Part 5 discusses the specialized roles required, the multi-agent AI network. It sounds like one single AI isn't enough. You need a team of them.
That's the concept. Effective foresight, covering all the bases from market shifts to internal operations to customer health, really necessitates a network of specialized AI agents. Think of them as a team of domain experts. They continuously monitor their specific area, exchange relevant data with each other, and feed insights up to augment the collective intelligence of the whole system. They break down the data silos architecturally.
Okay, let's meet the team. First up, the external interface, the Market Scout agent.
This agent is your eyes and ears focused firmly outward. Its job is to continuously scan, ingest, and analyze massive volumes of external intelligence. Pricing trends in the market, competitor product launches or strategic moves, regulatory shifts bubbling up, geopolitical risks that could impact your supply chain or customer demand in specific regions.
So it's bringing the outside world in
a structured way. Its primary function is providing real-time, relevant business intelligence, specifically for strategic planning and risk assessment. It spots those external inflection points early enough for the organization to actually react proactively, rather than reading about it in the news after the fact.
Okay, then synthesizing that external view with what's happening inside is the revenue analyst agent.
Right, this is the internal synthesis engine. This agent focuses on the core revenue engine performance. It builds sophisticated financial models, tracks key velocities like pipeline velocity, conversion rates through different stages, deal cycle times. It analyzes performance across the entire quote-to-cash process to uncover systemic bottlenecks or friction points.
So if quotes are getting stuck somewhere,
the revenue analyst agent should flag that, quantify the impact, and maybe even correlate it with other internal factors, like a recent change in approval workflows. It translates complex internal performance data into actionable, quantitative insights for the executive team.
Now, absolutely crucial for the continuous value subscription-based model is the customer success agent, CSA.
Couldn't agree more. The CSA is all about being the proactive predictor of recurring revenue health and, just as importantly, expansion opportunities. This agent is designed to spot those really subtle, hidden signals in customer behavior months before visible red flags like a cancellation request appear.
What kind of hidden signal?
Subtle combinations of factors. Maybe a slight, persistent decline in overall usage frequency, coupled with reduced adoption of specific high-value features, or a shift in the tone or urgency of support tickets being logged. Things a human CSM might miss across a large portfolio.
And this allows.
This transforms churn prevention from being a reactive, last-ditch account salvaging effort into a proactive, data-driven strategic initiative. But it's not just about preventing churn. The CSA also identifies behavioral patterns characteristic of customers who are ready to upgrade or adopt additional services. It helps CSMs perfectly time those expansion conversations and even configure targeted expansion quotes with the highest likelihood of success.
Makes sense. Then we have the finance stability agent focusing on resilience.
Yes, this agent is laser-focused on the overall financial health and resilience of the revenue streams. It runs those predictive margin models we talked about, assessing sustainability under various stress scenarios. And critically, it works to streamline core financial processes that impact predictability, like collections and cash flow forecasting.
How does it help with collections again?
By monitoring the reliability of promised revenue actually turning into cash. It connects data from productivity tools, email confirmations, payment portal interactions with the core financial systems to provide a much clearer, near real-time picture of accounts receivable risk and expected inflow. This ensures the financial predictability that's essential for confident capital deployment and investment planning.
Okay, so you have these specialist agents potentially generating lots of signals, maybe even conflicting signals sometimes. Who pulls it all together?
That's the role of the strategy co-pilot. Think of this as the executive synthesis layer, the generalist agent overseeing the specialists. It manages the internal negotiation and reconciliation between potentially conflicting AI signals. For example, the market scout might be warning of an impending price war, demanding aggressive discounting, while the finance stability agent is simultaneously flagging capital constraints and margin pressure.
So the co-pilot has to balance those.
Exactly. The strategy co-pilot synthesizes this complex, multifaceted intelligence, prioritizes the scenarios and recommendations with the highest overall business impact, and provides that single, centralized, actionable intelligence output directly to the Human Revenue Council. It's essentially the operating system for the entire revenue foresight architecture.
Okay, this multi-agent approach sounds powerful. Let's bring it to life with those case studies mentioned in the sources, showing this engineered resilience in action. First, proactive pricing at, let's call them oceanic logistics.
Right, oceanic logistics. Historically, like many in their industry, they relied heavily on lagging economic indicators to set pricing. When they integrated an RFA, they started correlating highly leading internal indicators, things like the velocity of, quote, requests slowing down on certain routes, or unusual spikes in discount requests coming from specific corridors.
Things happening now inside their systems.
Exactly. Correlating those with external geopolitical volatility signals being flagged by their market scout agent. The system quickly flagged that deal pipelines were slowing significantly in a key high-margin corridor weeks before the official economic data confirmed a regional slowdown.
So you had an early warning. What action did the decision pulse initiate?
It immediately prompted their Foresight Council to convene and run a simulation using their digital twin. Based on the outputs, the resulting decision was quite bold. They adjusted their pricing models proactively. They shifted capacity on high-demand routes to a premium pricing tier several weeks earlier than they normally would have based on historical patterns. And they simultaneously rerouted about 15% of their available capacity away from the corridor, flagged as high risk, towards another route projected by the system to have higher growth potential and lower volatility.
What was the result?
They managed to stabilize their margins and optimize their capacity utilization significantly during a downturn. Meanwhile, their competitors, still relying on the lagging historical market data, reacted months later and suffered significant underutilization and severe margin erosion. Oceanic moved from being price takers, reacting to the market, to becoming price shapers using engineered foresight.
That's a compelling case. What about the second one, supply resilience at Meditech devices, operating in a highly regulated healthcare supply chain?
Yeah, Meditech faced huge risks in their complex supply chain. They used their multi-agent RFA system to continuously monitor thousands of indicators: supplier health, geopolitical risk in manufacturing regions, raw material cost forecasts, logistics bottlenecks,
Thousands of indicators.
far beyond human capacity to track manually. In one instance, their market scout and revenue analyst agents working together projected a high probability of significant volatility for a critical chemical precursor used in many of their devices. This was still a weak signal at the time, not yet visible in hard order data or supplier notifications.
So, another early warning from the system. What did their Foresight Council do?
They ran simulations on their digital twin to model the potential impact of, say, a 50% reduction in supply of this precursor for 6 months. The potential impact on production and revenue was alarming.
So what was the early intervention they took?
Based on the simulation results, they initiated non-standard, quite aggressive intervention months in advance of the predicted trouble. They used the Foresight projection to renegotiate some long-term contracts under more favorable terms while they still had leverage. And crucially, they immediately placed significant financial deposits with qualified alternative suppliers in different geographical regions to secure future capacity.
Hedging their bets based on the prediction.
Exactly. And when the projected global supply disruption for that precursor actually hit several months later, impacting many industries, Meditech, because of their early data-driven actions, maintained their inventory flow almost uninterrupted. They completely avoided the crisis that plagued other sectors of medical device manufacturing globally.
Wow.
Their engineered resilience didn't just protect revenue, it protected patient access to critical medical components and significantly enhanced their market reputation for reliability. That's Foresight delivering tangible strategic advantage.
Okay, as we start to wrap up this deep dive, let's synthesize the core message here. It feels like the true power of this entire shift from forecasting to foresight is less about achieving perfect numerical prediction.
Which is probably impossible anyway.
Right. And more about the architectural discipline of building organizational preparedness.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the future of growth leadership, especially in volatile markets, lies not in chasing the illusion of perfect numerical prediction, but in cultivating the deep-seated organizational agility necessary to navigate fundamental uncertainty successfully. Foresight, ultimately, is concerned with that architectural discipline preparing the organization for a range of possibilities through intentional design and building readiness into the core processes. It's reliance on intent and readiness, not just extrapolation.
And driving this requires rethinking how we measure success, right? We need new metrics beyond just hitting a static number. The sources mentioned adaptive KPIs and predictive confidence bands.
Yes, this is critical for reinforcing the right behaviors. Static KPIs, like a fixed quarterly booking target, can quickly become strategically misleading, even counterproductive in volatile markets. Adaptive KPIs are different. They utilize confidence bands around the target, and these bands can flex dynamically based on the system's predictive confidence about achievable outcomes and the current external conditions.
Give me an example.
Okay, let's say the RFA determines with high confidence that a sudden geopolitical event will unavoidably depress demand in a key territory for the next month, making the original booking target unreachable through reasonable effort. An adaptive KPI might allow the target for that territory to shift downwards temporarily, within a predefined tolerance band based on the system's analysis.
So the team isn't punished for external factors.
Exactly. It ensures the KPI remains strategically relevant. It rewards the team for executing the optimal adaptive strategy under the circumstances, maybe focusing on margin preservation or shifting resources effectively, rather than just blindly chasing an outdated, now unrealistic numerical target or engaging in bad behavior to hit it. It rewards adaptive action over static compliance.
So pulling it all together, what does this mean for the ambitious commercial leader listening today? What's the big takeaway?
I think maybe the most significant and perhaps underappreciated result of successfully implementing these kinds of predictive foresight systems is organizational rehearsal.
Rehearsal.
Yes. By continuously sensing potential futures, simulating impacts, stress testing responses, and discussing contingencies in those foresight forums, the organization is effectively training. It's training its internal systems, its cross-functional connections, and its human leadership for various eventualities before they escalate into full-blown emergencies. This institutionalized practice of rehearsal, of running the plays before the game, is arguably the ultimate competitive advantage in an unpredictable world.
Okay, so here's the final provocative thought we want to leave you, our listener, with. The ultimate competitive advantage isn't having the best product or even the best data. It's the organizational capability to learn and adapt faster than your competition. The best revenue leaders, the ones building truly resilient growth engines, don't seek merely to forecast the future with perfect accuracy. They proactively rehearse multiple futures. They focus on designing the commercial outcomes they desire, and they ensure their core systems, like quote and order management, are not just transaction processors, but intelligent engines driving continuous profitable value creation in this new economy.
And that internal capability, that hard-won internal clarity, agility, and decision readiness built through foresight, that's precisely what unlocks the next phase of strategic growth and market differentiation in the everything-as-a-service model.
Which is exactly what we'll be exploring in our next deep dive. Go-to-market reinvention. We'll look at how this intentional foresight, this internal readiness, becomes the engine for making aggressive, intelligent market moves and driving sustained business model transformation.
Looking forward to that one. Thanks for joining us today for this exploration of engineered growth.
We'll see you next time on the Deep Dive.